I upload daily NBA content on this channel, so if that is something that interests you, then subscribe. Also, drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and makes a massive difference. Also, real quick, if you are not yet, go subscribe to my second channel where I upload my Sixers My NBA series. I really want that channel to get to 15K subs by the end of the year, so I would really appreciate it. But with that out of the way, today I am talking about 5 NBA players that I believe will be traded this season. It's a rather generic title, but you get what I'm going for here. So the first guy I want to talk about is the guy at the center of the thumbnail, and that is, of course, Zach LaVine. Now, I have been trying to fight off the idea of a Zach LaVine trade for quite a while because I never really thought it made sense for the Bulls in the position they were in. But the position they are now in, based on how they started this season, makes me feel that Zach LaVine is going to want out sooner rather than later, and it'd be better to get ahead of that and trade him before even this year's deadline, before his value decreases from him asking for a trade, and giving specific destinations where he wants to go as well, which would likely be a part of it. So Zach LaVine is a very good NBA player, and I am quite tired of having to defend that. Like, the people that think he's empty stats are just stupid because he's not. But unfortunately, the Chicago Bulls are not a team that is built for him to really succeed whatsoever. Not suggesting a team should be built around Zach LaVine, but there are teams that are much better circumstances for him to be in. And I do believe that he's going to realize that and want out. And he's on a 2-year contract. He's also going to be 26 years old in March. So it's not like he's young for the NBA. He's not old either, but he's not young. He's like in his prime on a 2-year contract. Clearly established himself as one of the 50 or so best players in the NBA. And he's probably going to be tired of being in this bad situation in Chicago. So I imagine he is going to ask his way out. As for what some hypothetical trades would be, I think the clearest landing spot, provided the James Harden trade does not go down there, would be the Philadelphia 76ers. They need a shot-creating guard. I think the deal would be Matisse Thybulle, Danny Green's expiring contract, and 1, maybe 2 first-round picks. It depends on how high Zach LaVine's value is in the trade market. I'm not entirely sure how high it's going to be. The fact that it's just a 2-year contract is going to reduce that value a bit. But that works salary-wise. The Bulls get a defensive forward who has potential to be a decent three-point shooter. And if the Bulls end up landing like a Cade Cunningham in this draft, Cade can play point guard, Kobe can play his natural position of shooting guard, Matisse Thybulle can be the 3, Patrick Williams, ideally over Lauri Markkanen, can be the 4. That's another thing, but I don't think Lowry's a star, so I'm not including him in this video. And then Wendell Carter, if he can figure his shit out, can be the starting 5. But that's the future I see for the Bulls, and that's just a trade idea I have for him. Next, we're going to move on to DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge of the San Antonio Spurs. I'm not expecting either of these guys to get a whole lot of value, but they are both on 1-year deals, and they make their salaries are tradable. It's not like $30-something million for either of them. They're both somewhere in the 20s. Those are contracts that can be traded. As for some potential landing spots, ironically for LaMarcus Aldridge, I could actually see him landing on the Portland Trail Blazers. If the Blazers moved Derrick Jones Jr. as well as Enes Kanter's salary and probably gave them one of Anthony Simons or Nazir Little, they would make the salary up to trade for LaMarcus Aldridge, and they would get a third guy who can be a scoring option. He can play power forward next to Yusuf Nurkic. Robert Covington could be the small forward, and the starters would be Dame, CJ, Robert Covington, LaMarcus Aldridge, and and Yusuf Nurkic, and that's a pretty damn good basketball team. And it'd be cool to see him kind of be reunited in Portland, because there has been rumors that LaMarcus kind of wants to go back to Portland, so I could see that being a landing spot for him. As for DeMar DeRozan, getting a landing spot for him is more tricky just due to the fact that he's not really a three-point shooter. He did hit 3 of 4 threes yesterday, so maybe he's turning that around a little bit, but he's at the very least not going to be a good three-point shooter. And even when you are just basically a perfect offensive player outside of the three-point shot, because of how important the three-point shot is in 2020, there's going to be consequences to having that guy on your team, and there are a lot of teams that don't want to deal with those consequences. His contract is definitely tradable. There are going to be teams that would be interested for sure, but how much value they actually get back and what specific team actually makes said trade, I'm not entirely sure. But I do believe both of those guys are going to be gone. It's pretty clear to me that the Spurs have just been kind of delaying the inevitable, with them both being on one-year contracts in their 30s. I am very confident that they are going to walk in free agency, so it's in the best interest of the San Antonio Spurs to trade them at some point during the regular season. I expect both of them to be gone by the deadline for the Spurs. And then the next big guy that I want to talk about is Jon Collins. So I am conflicted about the whole Jon Collins situation because I think his fit in Atlanta is just marvelous. But the issue is, unfortunately, he wants more money than he's probably worth. However, because his fit is so good, it's like, I really don't want to see this guy go. So it's a tough decision. Jon Collins is a consistent 23-10 guy who last year really learned how to stretch the floor at an elite level, and he is not he's definitely a pretty damn good pick and roll player. He's a good rebounder. Defensively, he has improved. I'm kind of tired of people suggesting that he's not he's an abysmal defensive player when he's been pretty okay. Last year, he shot 58% from the field, 40% from 3, and 80% from the free throw line, grabbed 10 rebounds, and averaged 21 points, while being a decent defensive player. And I would make the argument that if you have one of the best pick-and-roll players in the league, it's nice to pair him with one of the best playmakers in the league. But the problem with that is he is not great defensively, even though I say he's not bad. And he wants more money than his talent probably is worth. And more importantly, when you consider the extension that's going to be coming up for Trae Young, unfortunately, if you give Jon Collins what he wants, one, it's going to be a bit of an overpay for the actual talent he is, and two, you're going to kind of be locked into your salary. So if you want to make a big move for somebody else, it's not going to be quite as easy, especially if Jon Collins is making more money than he's worth. So if you use him as a salary chip, that's going to be an issue. It's also going to be tough to just make any big significant moves because you're going to be locked into long-term salary. So it's a tough line to walk because I think Jon Collins is worth about $23 million a year. He is wanting upwards of the max. He's not worth the max, but I do think he's worth something close to it. I think he's kind of worth a Jaylen Brown type contract, and then there's a chance he outperforms it. There's a chance he doesn't outperform it, and then you just got him for a reasonable price. I think the fear of Jon Collins and his camp is that he's going to sign a Jaylen Brown type contract, and then he's going to have a breakout season like Jaylen Brown did, and then suddenly that contract looks like a steal for the team that he's on, and he could have been paid more. So that's what I think he's doing. He's betting on himself, and he's right to do that. Thus far, the first 2 games of the season, he hasn't played amazing, but it's 2 games, so it's not the end of the world. I imagine he'll pick up his play. But yeah, he also has averaged just 22 minutes. That's probably not a good sign. I imagine that's partially due to Danilo Gallinari wanting to get minutes at the 4. Yeah, I really want to see Jon Collins stay in Atlanta because I think that's a great fit. But I also understand why the Hawks are concerned about actually giving him a maximum contract, because what if Jon Collins, as your second best player, that ceiling is just not championship level and you're locked into that situation? So I understand the hesitance, but I also want him to stay in Atlanta, so it's just a situation that is unfortunate. So I do think there's a very high likelihood he gets traded just because of that contract situation. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent in the 2021 offseason. I know there's going to be teams like the New York Knicks who are going to be willing to offer him more money than he is worth. And I think the Hawks know that as well. I think Jon Collins knows that as well. So trade probably more than likely to happen. And then for a 5th star for this video to reach 5 stars, guess what? James Harden's going to be traded. Don't know if you knew that. I mean, there's also a chance he's not traded by the deadline. There's a chance he ends up holding out for the entire season. But I'm pretty confident he is going to be traded. So there's your 5th concrete star to make this an actual video. But let's actually, I'm just going to go over a few more names as well, just to kind of tackle guys who could potentially be traded. As for the Victor Oladipo trade talks, I actually don't think he's going to be moved. It seems like that was some minor stuff that was blown out of proportion. It really seems like Oladipo, A, wants to stay in Indiana, and B, doesn't seem like he's going to be good enough to really have his reasoning for wanting out of Indiana to be valid, because that reasoning was they weren't giving him the money he wanted, and the way he's been playing, it doesn't seem like he's he's going to be getting the money he wanted anyways anywhere, so his reasoning for wanting out isn't quite there. Blake Griffin, I don't know that he qualifies as a star. I mean, if he stays healthy, he is, but because he's injured so much, he's just kind of a nothing asset. And because of the contract he has, actually making a trade for him or trading him is not an easy task. But I definitely could see a team being desperate in making a trade like that, so I guess it's a possibility. Again, there's also probably likely to be a star-level player traded for James Harden, so there is that, like a Ben Simmons possibly, or maybe a Pascal Siakam for James Harden. That's a trade that I've seen here or there, so that's a possibility. Kevin Love, I don't think his contract's going anywhere. Nikola Vucevic, I think the Orlando Magic are kind of okay with just keeping him around, and I don't feel like I've had high hopes for Mo Bamba, but doesn't seem like he's actually going to capitalize on that potential, so I think they're just going to stick with Nikola Vucevic, so I think there's going to be another year where he's there, and that's about it. If DeMarcus Cousins ends up playing at a star level, I definitely think he'll be shipped for assets by the Houston Rockets, but that's a big if right there. I believe that's all the other names I can think of. There's also potentially Kyle Lowry, just because he's on a one-year contract and he might leave Toronto, but I really feel like Toronto is not going to trade him, like unless he basically asked out. I don't think he's going to be traded. Kemba Walker, even though he got shopped rather, like Danny Ainge was talking about trading him, I don't think that's actually going to happen, so that's not something I'm too worried about. CJ McCollum, if the James Harden trade actually went down, I mean, it's possible, but I don't think James Harden's going to Portland, like, at all. And yeah, that's pretty much all the names that I can think of confidently. Of course, the NBA is always a wild card, and things can happen at any point, so there's a good chance that a name that I'm not mentioning right now ends up getting into the mix, and we'll see what happens when that happens. But until then, go check out my second channel, my gaming channel, my 2K channel if you have not yet. But yeah, that's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and keep the outro music.